I cannot condemn her. Not with this doubt gnawing at my soul, thought Judge Elena, her heart pounding against her ribs as the prosecutor concluded his relentless accusation against Sophia, a young mother on the brink of despair. The silence in the courtroom was so dense it seemed to crush the defendant's hopes. Suddenly, a shard of glass cut through the air, and a dark, imposing figure burst through the window, landing with a dull thud on the jury box. In its sharp beak, the raven carried a tiny, shimmering object, which it released, letting it roll to the judge's feet. What that unexpected messenger would reveal would forever change the course of justice. The USB drive, a small silver metal rectangle, lay inert at Judge Elena's feet. Reflecting the cold courtroom light, a shocked murmur swept through the room, breaking the sepulchral silence of moments before. Elena, holding her breath, leaned slightly, her eyes fixed on the object, then on the raven which, majestic, remained on the jury box, watching her with an almost human intelligence. The bird seemed to wait, as if it had played its part in a drama that no one there yet understood. Prosecutor Almeida, a man usually impassive, was pale. His mouth opened and closed, unable to articulate a word. The defense, Sophia's young lawyer, Ms. Costa, rose abruptly, her eyes wide, alternating her gaze between the raven, the USB drive, and her client, who was now crying silently, no longer from despair, but from stunned confusion. Sophia lifted her face, her tear-filled eyes meeting Elena's, a silent question hanging in the air. Elena knew this was a watershed moment. With a firm gesture, but her voice choked with contained emotion, she struck the gavel. Order in the court. Ladies and gentlemen, this court is in immediate recess. This object will be seized and investigated with the utmost urgency. Her eyes swept the room, resting for an instant on the raven, which, to everyone's surprise, let out a soft caw before taking flight again, disappearing through the same broken window it had entered, leaving behind only the breeze and a trail of mystery. Judge Elena descended from her bench, feeling the weight of responsibility and a wave of hope mixed with incredulity. The bailiff, still in shock, approached to collect the USB drive. Eleanor took it carefully, the cold metal surface contrasting with the warmth of her palm. Ensure this device is handled with the utmost care. I want it analyzed by forensic specialists immediately, and I want a full report in less than 24 hours. Her voice, though low, carried unshakable authority. As the room began to empty in a buzz of speculation, Elena walked over to Sophia. The young mother, her face marked by tears and exhaustion, looked like a wax statue, fragile and about to collapse. Elena touched her shoulder delicately. Sophia, please try to stay calm. I don't know what this means, but we will do everything in our power to uncover the truth. Sophia merely nodded, unable to speak, but her eyes, previously empty, now shone with a small, faint flicker of hope. In the back of her mind, Eleanor recalled the stories circulating about the deceased businessman, Mr. Ricardo Menezes. He was known for his eccentricities, among them a passion for exotic animals and, in particular, a pet raven that accompanied him everywhere, an animal of remarkable intelligence, which he called King Raven. The idea that this raven could be the messenger of a hidden truth captured by its own eyes, as the premise suggested, seemed fantastic, almost a fairy tale amidst the harsh reality of the courtroom. Nevertheless, the judge felt a growing conviction. There was something providential about that event. Upon returning to her chambers, Elena felt her heart quicken. The doubt that had gnawed at her moments before had not completely vanished, but it was now accompanied by a new and powerful emotion, the hope that justice could, after all, be served. The image of Sophia, with her fragility and renewed hope in her eyes, motivated her even more. Elena knew the next few hours would be crucial. The USB drive, such a small object, carried the potential to rewrite Sophia's story and perhaps to restore her own unshakable faith in the truth, even if it came through the most improbable messengers. The judge looked at the broken window, imagining the raven flying free. What secrets did it hold? What images had its eyes recorded? The weight of responsibility was immense, but the possibility of correcting a wrong, of bringing light to darkness, was a burden Elena was more than willing to carry. She took a deep breath, preparing for the marathon that would follow, determined to unravel the mystery that the King Raven had brought. The search for truth now had a new and unexpected ally. Elena wasted no time. With the USB drive firmly in hand, she called Dr. Carlos Bittencourt, head of forensic analysis, a man she trusted completely. The judge's voice, laden with unusual urgency, explained the situation. "Carlos, I need your team to give this maximum priority. I want the USB drive analyzed immediately, with total secrecy. It's crucial for a case. I can't give details now, but I trust your ability to unravel whatever mystery the object contains." Carlos's response was immediate and professional. He assured her a team would be ready in minutes. Elena felt a sense of relief, but the anxiety of the imminent discovery tightened her chest. Every second counted for Sophia, whose fragile hope rested on that small object. The bailiff, Mr. Mendes, was tasked with taking the USB drive to the laboratory. He departed with unusual seriousness, aware of the gravity of the task. Elena tried to focus on other duties, but her mind incessantly returned to the raven. The image of the bird, majestic and mysterious, landing in the courtroom, was unforgettable. She wondered what Dr. Bittencourt would think of the King Raven story and its recordings. Would he be skeptical? Or would the strangeness of the event propel him into a thorough investigation? The judge hoped that professional curiosity would overcome initial incredulity. After all, truth sometimes chose the most improbable messengers. While awaiting news, Elena couldn't shake the image of Sophia. The young mother, with her pale face and swollen eyes, now bore a glimpse of almost palpable hope. Elena's responsibility was both legal and profoundly human. She felt the weight of expectations from Sophia, her family, and all who, like her, believed in a justice that went far beyond appearances. The judge imagined Sophia in her cell, perhaps for the first time in a long while, allowing herself to dream of freedom, of reuniting with her children. It was a fragile dream, dependent on a small device and a raven that defied logic. Elena promised to do everything to ensure that dream would not shatter. At the forensic laboratory, Dr. Bittencourt and his team were already in position. The USB drive was received with a mix of curiosity and professionalism. Carlos, with thin glasses and graying hair, examined the object with a magnifying glass. "A common USB drive, apparently," he murmured to his assistant, Dr. Lucia. "But Judge Elena is rarely wrong. Let's see what we have here." They connected the device to an isolated computer following security protocols. The tension in the room was palpable. The idea of an animal being the cameraman of a crime was unusual, but science sought evidence. Carlos's team was ready to uncover what the King Raven finally had to reveal. Minutes dragged like hours for Elena. She tried to keep busy, but her eyes kept darting to the clock. The promise of a report in less than 24 hours felt like an eternity. She wondered about the nature of the recordings. Would they be clear images, sounds? How did a raven capture something crucial? Her mind buzzed with questions. Suddenly her phone rang. It was Dr. Bittencourt. Elena's heart leaped. "Judge, we are accessing the files. It's truly extraordinary. It seems the King Raven was not just an eccentric pet. He was a silent and very effective witness." Carlos's voice, usually restrained, carried a tone of awe. Elena felt a shiver. The truth was beginning to manifest. Elena gripped the phone tightly, her heart beating erratically. "Carlos, what exactly have you found? What did the Raven record?" she asked, her voice almost a whisper, mixing anxiety with an almost unreal hope. On the other end of the line, Dr. Bittencourt took a deep breath, as if still processing what he was seeing. "Judge, the images, they are impressively clear. They're not just glimpses. The Raven, it was there, at the scene of the incident, and seems to have recorded everything from a unique perspective. It's as if it were a mobile camera. We are seeing the crime scene, but from an angle no one would ever imagine." In the laboratory, Dr. Lucia, wide-eyed, pointed at the screen. "Dr. Bittencourt, look at this. The quality is incredible. And the sound. You can hear voices, even if muffled." On the screen, the images trembled slightly, as if captured by a moving observer, but the sharpness was undeniable. The perspective was high from above, showing Mr. Menezes' office. It was possible to discern the luxurious furniture, the mess indicating a struggle, and most importantly, the figures present. The forensic team, accustomed to the coldness of science, was left speechless by such a peculiar revelation. The Raven, the King Raven, had been more than a witness. It was the visual narrator of a shocking truth. Elena asked Carlos to continue the analysis and keep her informed every step of the way. She hung up the phone, feeling her legs tremble. The truth she had sought so desperately was there, contained within that small device. The doubt that had tormented her since the beginning of Sophia's trial began to dissipate, replaced by a growing certainty. Sophia was innocent. The judge felt a wave of relief, followed by an iron determination. Justice would be served, and it would be served in a way no one would ever expect. The image of Sophia, with her fragility and the small flame of hope in her eyes, returned to Elena's mind. The young mother, facing unjust condemnation, was about to have her life restored. It wasn't just a legal matter, it was a matter of humanity, of compassion. Elena thought of Sophia's children, of the family awaiting her, the pain of separation, the anguish of a false accusation. All of it would be undone. The Raven, with its unexpected act, had not just delivered a USB drive, it had delivered a second chance, a miracle. The judge knew the path ahead would not be easy. The evidence was extraordinary, almost unbelievable. There would be skepticism, resistance. Prosecutor Almeida and even society might question the validity of evidence brought by an animal. But Elena was ready to fight. The truth, no matter how improbable its origin, deserved to be heard and defended. She prepared for the battle to come, a battle to dismantle prejudices and restore faith in justice. In the laboratory, Carlos and Lucia continued to examine the images. What unfolded on the screen was a clear narrative, shocking in its simplicity. The voices, now clearer, revealed a tense dialogue, an unexpected confrontation between the businessman and a figure everyone knew well. The key witness, who had testified with such conviction against Sophia, was there, at the crime scene, in a completely different position than he had claimed. His gestures, his expressions, everything was captured with terrifying precision. The Raven, Mr. Menezes' faithful companion, had recorded the betrayal. Elena took a deep breath, feeling a mix of indignation and satisfaction. Justice, at times, chose the most circuitous paths and the most improbable messengers. But it always found its way. The King Raven was not just a pet, it was the guardian of truth, a symbol that life, in its complexity, always finds a way to reveal what is hidden. The judge felt profound gratitude. Her faith in justice, which had wavered for a moment, now strengthened, more resilient than ever. The time to act had come. The time to act had come, and Elena felt a whirlwind of emotions. Gratitude for the Raven's miracle mingled with the urgency to rectify the injustice. The next step was clear: call an emergency hearing, but first she needed irrefutable proof. She called Dr. Bittencourt again, asking him and Dr. Lucia to prepare a detailed technical report with screenshots and audio transcripts. Carlos, the credibility of this will depend on every detail. We need to be impeccable, she instructed, her voice firm, but with an almost imperceptible tremor. In the laboratory, the forensic team was immersed in the recording. Dr. Lucia, her eyes fixed on the screen, barely blinked. Dr. Bittencourt, it's unbelievable. The person arguing with Mr. Menezes. It's Mr. Eduardo Silva, the key witness for the prosecution. Carlos, pale, nodded. Eduardo Silva, the businessman's right-hand man who had testified with tears about Sofia's cruelty, was the true aggressor. The images showed a heated confrontation. Eduardo, his face contorted with rage, pushed Menezes, who stumbled and hit his head. It wasn't premeditated murder, but a fatal accident resulting from a violent argument. The raven, perched high above, had captured every moment. Lucia paused the recording. Silence filled the room, heavy with the revelation. He lied, Dr. Bittencourt. He lied to the court, to Menezes' family, to everyone. Carlos ran a hand through his graying hair. And he tried to incriminate an innocent person. The callousness is shocking. They exchanged glances. Science, through the most improbable lens, had unmasked a deception. Back in her chambers, Elena felt indignation and profound relief. The image of Eduardo Silva, impeccable and convincing, crumbled in her mind. The betrayal was twofold, to his friend and to justice. But above all, Elena felt immense joy for Sofia. That young mother who had endured so much suffering was about to be freed. The injustice would be corrected. Elena picked up the phone again, this time calling Ms. Costa, the defense lawyer. Ms. Costa, I need you to come to the courthouse immediately and prepare Sofia for an extraordinary hearing. We have news that will change everything. The lawyer's voice was filled with surprise and hope. Judge, what happened? Elena smiled, a genuine smile. The King Raven kept its promise. The truth has come to light. The judge knew the revelation would cause an earthquake. Prosecutor Almeida would have to swallow his pride. Society, which had already condemned Sofia, would confront its prejudices. But Elena was ready for the storm. Faith in justice, sometimes a distant ideal, now materialized spectacularly. She thought of Sofia's family, of the joy the news would bring, the human connection, the altruism of an animal that sought the truth. All of it was a powerful reminder that even in the darkest moments, hope and justice can prevail. Elena took a deep breath, feeling renewed strength for the battle ahead. The truth, finally, would be revealed to all. The truth, finally, would be revealed to all. Elena felt the weight of that thought, but also a renewed courage that propelled her. The conviction in her voice when speaking with Ms. Costa had been a harbinger of the strength that now dominated her. It wouldn't be easy, she knew. The evidence was, at the very least, unusual, almost a challenge to logic. A raven as an eyewitness, a USB drive as irrefutable proof. She knew that skepticism would be the first and most formidable barrier to overcome, both in court and in public opinion. Her fingers, firm, dialed Prosecutor Almeida's number. The call was answered quickly, and Elena wasted no time with pleasantries. Dr. Almeida, I have called an emergency hearing for tomorrow morning. We have new evidence that requires immediate attention and that, I believe, will drastically change the course of this trial. There was a heavy silence on the other end of the line, followed by a tone of voice laden with incredulity and a hint of irritation. New evidence, Judge? The trial was in its final phase, close to sentencing. What kind of evidence, please, could emerge now, so abruptly? Elena took a deep breath, preparing for resistance. Evidence that challenges what we thought we knew. Dr. Bittencourt from Forensic Analysis will present the details. Be prepared for the unexpected, Dr. Almeida, and for an unprecedented twist. She hung up, imagining the prosecutor's pale, confused face, who surely already felt the ground beneath his feet waver. Meanwhile, at the prison, news of the extraordinary hearing reached Sophia like a ray of sunshine amidst the deepest darkness. Ms. Costa, with a smile she couldn't contain and eyes brimming with relief, explained the essentials without going into fantastical details about flying ravens. Sophia, Judge Elena has found something very important that can prove your innocence. We need to have faith, more than ever. Sophia, sitting on her narrow bed, brought her hands to her face, tears streaming freely. But this time they were tears of hope, not despair. Her shoulders trembled with emotion. The idea of seeing her children again, of hugging them once more, of feeling the warmth of her home, seemed for the first time in a long while a tangible dream, almost within her grasp. Elena, in her chambers, mentally reviewed the procedures. The presentation of evidence had to be impeccable, irrefutable. Dr. Bittencourt's report, which promised to be detailed, technical, and scientifically grounded, would be fundamental in lending credibility to the King Raven's story, transforming the unbelievable into fact. She imagined the courtroom's reaction, the initial shock, the murmurs of astonishment, the incredulity that she hoped would transform into acceptance in the face of the undeniable clarity of the images and the logic that would unfold. It was a decisive moment, not only for Sophia, but for the very integrity of the justice system, which would be tested in its capacity to embrace the truth, no matter how improbable its origin. She thought of the values that guided her in every decision, the tireless pursuit of truth, the protection of the innocent, the overcoming of obstacles imposed by life and bureaucracy. That raven, such an improbable and silent messenger, had become a symbol of altruism, an unexpected bridge between the animal world and the complexity of human justice. The connection it had established, even if unconsciously, with the truth, was a powerful reminder that life always finds a way to manifest itself. Judge Elena felt the immense weight of responsibility, but also an unusual lightness in her heart. The doubt that had gnawed at her had completely dissipated, giving way to an almost unshakable serenity. Now, there was only the certainty that she was on the right path, fulfilling her deepest duty. She stood up, walked to the window, and looked at the night sky. The full moon shone intensely, illuminating the sleeping city. Somewhere the King Raven might be flying free, oblivious to the revolution its actions had unleashed. But Elena knew it had played its part. Now it was up to her to ensure that the truth, however fantastic it seemed, was fully recognized and that justice prevailed. Dawn would bring with it a new and decisive chapter for Sophia and for justice itself. Dawn would bring with it a new and decisive chapter for Sophia and for justice itself. The first rays of sun peeked through the curtains of Judge Elena's chambers. She was already up, dressed, feeling a knot in her stomach from the immense responsibility. Her eyes, though tired, shone with determination. She mentally reviewed the arguments, the objections. She knew the battle would be arduous. In the cold prison cell, Sophia had been unable to sleep. The news of the extraordinary hearing had ignited such an intense flame in her chest that sleep refused to come. She sat on the edge of her bed, her hands clasped in silent prayer. Ms. Costa's words, "Judge Elena found something," echoed in her mind. For the first time in months, she allowed herself to dream of the scent of her children, of the embrace that awaited her. A tear rolled down, but it was one of pure hope. She trusted the judge. At the forensic laboratory, Dr. Carlos Bittencourt and Dr. Lucia worked tirelessly. The technical report was almost ready, with screenshots and audio analyses. The clarity is impressive, Lucia, but how do we prove there was no manipulation? The origin of the recording is our Achilles heel, Carlos said, adjusting his glasses, his brow furrowed. Lucia nodded, pointing out a detail. Dr. Du, the way the Raven holds the USB drive and the flight perspective. It would be difficult to replicate with a human camera. They sought every detail to authenticate the evidence. Suddenly, Elena's phone rang. It was Ms. Costa, her voice laden with urgency and discouragement. Judge, Prosecutor Almeida has filed a motion to challenge the new evidence. He claims its origin is fantastic and scientifically unverifiable, a desperate attempt to manipulate the jury. He has summoned an expert to testify against the validity of the USB drive. Elena's heart leaped. She expected resistance, but not such a direct attack. The prosecutor's words were a harsh blow, an attempt to discredit everything. Elena felt a brief discouragement, a knot in her throat. Doubt threatened to return, but the image of Sophia with her eyes full of hope appeared in her mind. No, she could not yield. She could not allow cynicism to defeat the truth. Her fists clenched. Ms. Costa, tell Prosecutor Almeida that the motion will be reviewed, but the hearing will proceed as planned, and tell him that truth at times defies logic. Prepare to defend the authenticity of every pixel and every sound. I trust Dr. Bittencourt's work. Elena's voice was firmer than ever, charged with a new and fierce determination. The turning point had arrived, and with it the need to fight. The battle for truth was just beginning, and Elena was ready to face it, head held high. Elena's determination was a shield against discouragement. Prosecutor Almeida's motion to challenge was a low blow, but not unexpected. She knew that truth, when it manifested in such unique ways, demanded an even more vigorous defense. It was necessary not only to present the evidence, but to prove the evidence with a clarity that would dispel any shadow of doubt. Immediately, Elena called Dr. Bittencourt back. Carlos, Prosecutor Almeida is trying to discredit everything. We need a forensic analysis so robust that it leaves no room for doubt. Every detail of the USB drive's authenticity, the recording, the impossibility of manipulation. Prepare for a rigorous interrogation and to defend what science has revealed to us. Carlos's voice, though serious, conveyed unshakable confidence. Judge, we were already anticipating this. Dr. Lucia and I are focused precisely on that. We are analyzing the file's metadata, the time consistency, the camera's perspective, the way the Raven held the USB drive, the way it moved. All of this leaves unique digital fingerprints that a human camera would not replicate. We are building an irrefutable case for the recording's authenticity. In prison, Sophia felt the weight of the emotional roller coaster. Ms. Costa's initial joy had been tempered by the news of the challenge. Hope, so recent and fragile, now trembled like a candle in the wind, threatening to extinguish. She clung to the lawyer's words. Judge Elena will not give up. But the fear that justice once again would turn its back on her and unjustly condemn her was a heavy burden on her shoulders. She closed her eyes, imagining her children, their laughter, the warmth of their hugs. It was for them that she needed to be strong, even when strength seemed to drain away. Elena, for her part, dedicated the afternoon to studying precedents, seeking arguments that could support the admissibility of such peculiar evidence. The law was clear about the need for authenticity, but flexible enough to embrace new forms of proof. The challenge was to convince skeptical minds that nature, in its wisdom and through an act of pure altruism, had offered an unexpected and crucial witness. Ms. Costa arrived at Elena's chambers, her eyes tired, but her posture firm, reflecting the judge's own determination. Judge, Prosecutor Almeida is mobilizing all resources. He wants his expert to disqualify Dr. Bittencourt and Dr. Lucia. He will try to paint the Raven's story as a hoax, an invention to manipulate public opinion. Eleanor nodded, her jaw tense, but her eyes fixed and burning. And we will show that it is the purest truth. Ms. Costa, prepare for a technical and emotional debate. We need to humanize the story, show Sophia's desperation, the improbability of the messenger, and the undeniable clarity of the evidence. Justice cannot close itself off to the unusual when an innocent life is at stake, when overcoming such a great obstacle depends on our faith. The defense lawyer felt a wave of energy and renewed hope. The judge's determination was contagious, a beacon in the midst of the storm. We will do this, Judge, for Sophia, for her children, for all who believe that truth always finds a way, no matter how circuitous it may be. In the laboratory, Carlos and Lucia were finalizing the report. On the screen, a sequence of images showed the Raven flying, landing, and then the confrontation scene, with a slightly unstable but incredibly detailed perspective, revealing every movement of Eduardo Silva. Ready, Judge. The report is complete. Every pixel, every sound wave, authenticated with scientific rigor. We have proof that the King Raven is the most honest and improbable witness to ever set foot in this courtroom. Carlos's voice was one of contained triumph, but laden with professional pride. Elena read the report carefully. Each paragraph was a brick in the wall she would build against skepticism. Science and the unexpected united to serve justice, strengthening the human connection to truth. Her unshakable faith, which had wavered for a moment, now had a solid foundation. The dawn of the next day would be the stage for the most extraordinary revelation that courtroom had ever witnessed. Sophia's hope, once a thin thread, now wove into a strong rope, ready to pull her back to life, to her family, to her freedom. Sophia's hope, once a thin thread, now wove into a strong rope, ready to pull her back to life, to her family, to her freedom. The dawn of that crucial day arrived with a dense fog over the city, as if nature itself hesitated to reveal what was to come. In her chambers, Judge Elena observed the grey sky, feeling the weight of the imminent decision. She donned her robe with a mix of solemnity and determination. Her eyes, which had witnessed so much pain and injustice, now carried the light of an unshakable faith. She knew that day would not just be about a verdict, but about redefining justice itself. In prison, Sophia was woken earlier than usual. Her heart beat erratically in her chest, a melody of fear and an almost painful hope. Ms. Costa, who was waiting for her, touched her shoulder gently. "Courage, Sophia. This is our day." Sophia nodded, her lips trembling. As she was led through the cold corridors, each step was an echo of her journey of suffering, but also a silent promise of a different future. She closed her eyes for an instant, imagining the faces of her children, the reason for her fight. The connection with them was her safe harbor, her deepest strength. The courtroom was packed, the atmosphere charged with expectation. Journalists, curious onlookers, and Mr. Menezes' family occupied every seat, murmurs filling the air. Prosecutor Almeida displayed a confident demeanor, but Elena noticed a flicker of unease in his eyes when she saw him. He believed his motion to challenge would be enough to block the Raven's fantasy. Today, when Judge Elena entered the room, a respectful silence settled. Her presence was imposing, but her eyes conveyed a humanity that few there perceived. She sat down, adjusting her robe, and looked at Sophia, who was pale, but with a glimpse of strength in her gaze. Elena felt a pang of compassion and reaffirmed her purpose. "I declare this extraordinary hearing open," Elena announced, her voice clear and firm, echoing through the hall. "As is known to all, new evidence has been presented, and it is the duty of this court to evaluate it with the seriousness and rigor that the pursuit of truth demands." She paused, fixing her gaze on the prosecutor. Prosecutor Almeida, your motion to challenge has been reviewed. Although the nature of the evidence is indeed unusual, the law allows us to consider all forms of evidence that can contribute to justice. Therefore, the motion is denied. The evidence will be presented. A murmur spread through the room. Prosecutor Almeida's face visibly paled, his confidence crumbling under the judge's unshakable gaze. He opened his mouth to protest, but Elena raised her hand, silencing him. We will now give the floor to Dr. Carlos Bittencourt, forensic expert, to present the technical report on the new evidence. Carlos Bittencourt and Lucia, with the report in hand and a projection screen already prepared, walked to the podium. Their faces, though serious, revealed the excitement of those about to reveal something extraordinary. They knew they were not just presenting a report, but unveiling a miracle. The overcoming of obstacles, faith in science, and the courage of an animal united in that moment. Truth, at times, chose the most improbable messengers to manifest itself. The human connection to justice was about to be tested in a way no one would ever imagine. Dr. Bittencourt adjusted the microphone, his voice resonating with clarity. Your Honor, members of the court, ladies and gentlemen, what we will present today challenges common perception, but it is backed by rigorous forensic analysis. We received a data storage device, a USB drive, which contained crucial audio and video recordings for this case. He paused dramatically, allowing the words to sink in. The origin of this USB drive is, indeed, singular. It was brought to this court by a raven. The victim, Mr. Menezes's pet, known as King Raven. A murmur of astonishment swept through the room, louder and more persistent this time. Journalists began scribbling frantically in their notebooks. Prosecutor Almeida, seated at the prosecution table, frowned in disbelief, a skeptical, almost condescending smile beginning to form on his lips. Elena, however, maintained her serene expression, a glint of anticipation in her eyes. She looked at Sophia, who, despite her paleness, watched Carlos with an almost feverish intensity, her hands clasped in her lap. With the judge's permission, Carlos continued, we would like to project the images and audio contained on this device. Elena nodded. Dr. Lucia clicked a remote control, and the large screen behind the podium came to life. The initial image was slightly unstable, with an elevated viewpoint, as if suspended in the air. The audience held its breath. Our initial analysis focused on authenticity, Lucia explained, her voice calm and technical. The file's metadata, time consistency, and the camera's perspective, the way the USB drive was transported and how the Raven moved, leave unique digital fingerprints. A human camera would not replicate this flight perspective. The slight tilt, the way the focus naturally adjusts as the animal lands. The screen then showed a sequence of images that solidified the explanation. The Raven, with the USB drive firmly clutched in its beak, flew over a garden, landing on a high tree branch. The scene unfolding below, captured with surprising clarity, was that of Mr. Menezes's property. Prosecutor Almeida paled even further, his skeptical smile dissolving into a look of shock. Every pixel, every sound wave has been authenticated with scientific rigor, Carlos emphasized, his voice growing in conviction. The recording is genuine and has not been manipulated. On the screen, the image stabilized, revealing Mr. Menezes and Eduardo Silva in a heated argument. Eduardo's gestures were expansive, his face contorted in an expression of rage that violently contrasted with the composed image he had projected in court. Sophia, seeing the scene, brought her hands to her mouth, a sob escaping her lips. Tears of relief and disbelief streamed down her face, but this time they were tears that washed away the pain of months of injustice. Hope, which for so long had been a distant mirage, now materialized before her eyes, palpable and real. The truth, finally, was unfolding. The image on the courtroom screen stabilized, clearly revealing the heated argument between Mr. Menezes and Eduardo Silva. Eduardo's gestures were expansive, his face contorted in an expression of rage that violently contrasted with the composed image of calm and sorrow he had projected in court during his testimony. Sophia, seeing the scene, brought her hands to her mouth, a sob escaping her lips. Tears of relief and disbelief streamed down her face, but this time they were tears that washed away the pain of months of injustice, of sleepless nights, and of the absence of her children. Hope, which for so long had been a distant mirage, now materialized before her eyes, palpable and real. The truth, finally, was unfolding, freeing her from a nightmare. In the video, Mr. Menezes tried to back away, his expression of surprise and fear evident before Eduardo's fury. Eduardo, however, seemed uncontrollable, consumed by blind rage. The words, though muffled by distance and the Raven's aerial perspective, were captured by the audio that Dr. Lucia amplified for the entire room. "You won't bother me, old man. I deserve more than crumbs," Eduardo shouted, his eyes flashing with terrifying intensity. Mr. Menezes tried to argue, extending his hand in a gesture of appeasement, asking for calm, but Eduardo pushed him with brutal force. The impact was unexpected and violent. Mr. Menezes staggered backward, lost his balance and fell, hitting his head on one of the ornamental stones in the garden. The image trembled slightly with the sudden movement, but the sound of the impact was unmistakable, echoing in the silent room. Eduardo, for an instant, seemed shocked, paralyzed by his own action, before looking around frantically, as if checking if anyone had witnessed his act. Then, with an air of desperation and cold calculation, he bent down, checked on Mr. Menezes, and then began to alter the scene, moving some nearby objects, trying to simulate another situation, another narrative. A sepulchral silence fell over the courtroom, broken only by Sophia's suppressed sobs and the shocked murmurs that began to spread like wildfire. Prosecutor Almeida, previously confident and haughty, was now pale, his eyes fixed on the screen, his jaw dropped in disbelief and frustration. The key witness, the loyal friend who had testified with such conviction against Sophia, was the true perpetrator of the tragedy. Judge Elena watched the screen with a serenity that hid the intensity of her own emotions. Her intuition, that persistent feeling that something was deeply wrong, had been confirmed in a way that defied logic, yet was undeniably true. Justice, she thought, sometimes required looking beyond the obvious, an openness to the unexpected, to the courage of a winged messenger. She felt an immense weight lift from her shoulders, replaced by deep satisfaction and the certainty that she was fulfilling her most sacred duty. The truth, however improbable its messenger, had found its way. Dr. Lucia paused the video, allowing the gravity of the scene to settle in everyone's minds. "As you can see, Your Honor and members of the jury, the recording is clear and irrefutable. Sophia was not present at any time. The confrontation occurred exclusively between Mr. Menezes and Eduardo Silva, culminating in the victim's accidental fall, provoked by the assault." Carlos Bittencourt intervened, his voice firm and full of scientific authority. The analysis of the fall trajectory, combined with the force of the push, visible in the video, is perfectly consistent with the injuries found on Mr. Menezes. There was no premeditated intent to murder on Eduardo's part, but an unthinking assault that resulted in a fatality. And crucially, Ms. Sophia had no participation, direct or indirect, in this tragic event. Sophia's eyes met Judge Elena's. It was a look of immense gratitude, of a soul reborn from the ashes of injustice, of a mother who saw the possibility of reuniting with her children. Elena responded with an almost imperceptible nod, a gesture of recognition, compassion, and the silent promise that justice would be served. The human connection between them, forged by the tireless pursuit of truth, was palpable, a bond of hope. Prosecutor Almeida, recovering from the initial shock, tried to stammer an objection, but his words were lost in the wave of emotion and incredulity that swept through the room. Sophia's family, present at the hearing, erupted in tears of relief and tight hugs, joy exploding after months of anguish. The overcoming of such a gigantic obstacle, the liberation of an innocent person, was now within reach. Faith in justice, briefly shaken, was spectacularly restored, proving that truth always finds a way, even if it is through the wings of a raven. That was a moment of triumph for altruism, for persistence, and for the unshakable belief in human dignity. A wave of emotion swept through the courtroom, shock, relief, and silent indignation. Sophia's tears, previously contained, now flowed freely, washing away the pain of months of an unjust nightmare. She couldn't tear her eyes from the screen, where the image of Eduardo Silva, the man who had incriminated her, still lingered, a ghost of his own falsehood. Judge Elena, feeling the accelerated pulse of the room, struck the gavel forcefully. "Order! Order in this court!" Her firm voice carried the gravity of the moment. The murmurs ceased, but the tension remained, dense and palpable. Prosecutor Almeida, his face still pale and his lips trembling, tried to compose himself. "Your Honor, with all due respect, the defense has not yet had the opportunity to challenge the validity of this witness. It is unprecedented evidence, open to interpretations." His words sounded hollow, devoid of his usual conviction. He gestured weakly, his eyes nervously darting away from the judge, unable to meet her penetrating gaze. Elena interrupted him, her voice sharp as a blade. "Prosecutor Almeida, the authenticity of the evidence has been exhaustively demonstrated by the experts with unquestionable scientific rigor. The images and audio speak for themselves. If you have any specific technical objection, present it now, based on facts, not on speculation." The judge leaned slightly, her gaze fixed on the prosecutor, who shrugged, defeated. He knew there were no more arguments. At that instant, a sudden movement caught everyone's attention. Eduardo Silva, who until then had remained motionless, his eyes glued to the screen, abruptly rose from his seat in the audience. His face was disfigured, no longer by the contained rage from the video, but by paralyzing terror. He tried to run towards the exit, pushing people out of his way, a cornered animal. "No, it's a lie, all lies," he shouted, his voice hoarse and desperate, echoing through the hall. The reaction was immediate. Two bailiffs who were already on alert acted quickly, intercepting Eduardo before he could reach the door. He struggled, resisting with blind fury, but was restrained and handcuffed. The scene, though without explicit violence, was dramatic, revealing the downfall of a man who believed himself untouchable. Sophia, watching everything, felt a chill, but also a wave of liberation. Justice was indeed manifesting itself. Judge Eleanor observed the scene with solemn gravity. Her heart, which for a moment had tightened with the attempted escape, now filled with unshakable certainty. "Officers, escort Mr. Eduardo Silva. He will be detained for immediate interrogation and will answer to the appropriate charges, including obstruction of justice and perjury." Her voice was a final decree, the authority of her office manifested in every syllable. She then turned her gaze to Sophia, who watched her with tear-filled eyes. The judge allowed a small, almost imperceptible, smile of compassion. "Ms. Sophia, in light of the irrefutable evidence presented, this court declares your complete innocence regarding the murder of Mr. Menezes." The judge's words were like a balm to Sophia's soul. A muffled cry of joy escaped her throat, and she collapsed in tears, this time of pure gratitude and profound relief. Sophia's family erupted in applause and sobs of joy, embracing each other fervently. Ms. Costa, the defense lawyer, rushed to hug Sophia, her own eyes welling up. "You are free, Sophia, free!" The human connection, altruism, and the overcoming of a monumental obstacle had prevailed. Faith in justice, so tested, now shone with renewed intensity, proving that truth, however improbable its messenger, would always find a way to light. Judge Elena felt the emotion fill the room, a testament to the power of truth and the resilience of the human spirit. She knew this verdict was not just about Sophia, but about the belief that justice, in its purest form, would always triumph. Judge Elena felt the emotion fill the room, a testament to the power of truth and the resilience of the human spirit. She knew this verdict was not just about Sophia, but about the belief that justice, in its purest form, would always triumph. Elena watched the scene with a lump in her throat, but also with deep satisfaction. This was not a personal triumph, but one of justice itself, of the unshakable faith she had maintained against all odds. She waited for the commotion to subside a little before uttering her final words. "Ms. Sophia, your freedom will be arranged immediately. May this day mark the beginning of a new phase in your life, alongside your beloved family." Elena's voice was choked with contained emotion, but her authority was unquestionable. Sophia, still crying, looked at the judge and made a gesture of thanks, a silent bow worth more than 1,000 words. Ms. Costa, with tears in her eyes, helped Sophia to her feet, and together they walked towards the exit, amidst applause and admiring glances. Outside the courthouse, the commotion was even greater. Journalists crowded around, microphones extended, but Sophia only had eyes for one thing: her children. They were there, small and anxious, clinging to their grandmother. When Sophia saw them, a cry of joy and relief escaped her chest. She ran towards them, arms open, and squeezed them in an embrace that seemed to want to make up for all the months of absence. The children, at first hesitant, soon clung to their mother, crying with happiness. It was a scene that melted the hardest hearts, a vivid symbol of family restoration, of overcoming pain. Sophia's grandmother, with tear-filled eyes, joined the hug, murmuring thanks to the heavens. The human connection, so fragile from injustice, was now reforged, stronger than ever. Meanwhile, back in the courtroom, Judge Elena finalized the proceedings. Eduardo Silva had already been taken into custody, his fate now in the hands of a new legal process. Prosecutor Almeida, visibly shaken, approached the judge's bench. "Your Honor, I don't know what to say. I was so certain." His voice was a whisper of defeat. Elena looked at him with compassion. "Prosecutor Almeida, justice is not about being right, but about seeking the truth. Sometimes it surprises us, challenges us to look beyond what is conventional. The important thing is that the truth prevailed." She paused, her gaze fixed on the prosecutor. "May this case serve as a lesson to us. May we never close ourselves off to the possibility that truth can manifest in the most improbable ways." Later, in her chambers, Elena removed her robe, feeling the weight of responsibility dissipate. The afternoon sunlight streamed through the window, illuminating the room. She picked up the photo on her desk of her own children, and a soft, almost imperceptible smile formed on her lips. The image of Sophia embracing her children replayed in her mind. That case had been a watershed moment, not just for Sophia, but for her too. It had reaffirmed her faith in humanity, in the capacity for overcoming adversity, and in the resilience of the human spirit. The raven, that improbable messenger, had not only delivered evidence, but rekindled the flame of hope in many hearts. Justice, she reflected, was not just a set of laws, but an act of faith, a commitment to truth and to the dignity of every individual. The human connection was the foundation of everything. And Sophia's story would be an eternal reminder of that. That day, she knew, would be remembered not only as the day an innocent person was freed, but as the day justice itself reinvented itself, embracing the extraordinary to serve the greater good. The lesson was clear. Truth always finds a way, and hope, however faint it may seem, must never, ever be abandoned. That day, she knew, would be remembered not only as the day an innocent person was freed, but as the day justice itself reinvented itself, embracing the extraordinary to serve the greater good. The lesson was clear. Truth always finds a way, and hope, however faint it may seem, must never ever be abandoned. Elena, seated in her leather chair, watched the sunlight fade from her chamber's window. The silence that once felt heavy to her was now a balm. The weight of the robe, which she had felt on her shoulders moments ago, was replaced by a lightness in her heart. She picked up the photo on her desk of her own children, and a soft, almost imperceptible smile formed on her lips. The image of Sophia embracing her children replayed in her mind, a vibrant echo of the joy and relief that filled the courtroom. That case had been a watershed moment, not just for Sophia, but for her too. It had reaffirmed her faith in humanity, in the capacity for overcoming adversity, and in the resilience of the human spirit. The raven, that improbable messenger, had not only delivered evidence, but rekindled the flame of hope in many hearts. Justice, she reflected, was not just a set of laws, but an act of faith, a commitment to truth and to the dignity of every individual. The human connection was the foundation of everything, and Sophia's story would be an eternal reminder of that. Meanwhile, Sophia's life was reborn. The first days were of an indescribable sweetness, filled with the scent of her children's hair, the warmth of their tight hugs, and the melody of their laughter. Every family meal, every story told before bedtime was an invaluable treasure. The house, once silent and gloomy, now radiated light and life. Sophia watched her little ones play in the yard, the sun gilding their hair, and felt profound gratitude. Her grandmother, with her wise and loving gaze, was a pillar of support, helping Sophia rebuild her routine and heal emotional wounds. The community, which had once looked at her with suspicion, now welcomed her with warmth and solidarity, many approaching to offer help and words of comfort. The story of the raven and the revealed truth had touched everyone, transforming skepticism into admiration for the persistence of justice. Sophia knew the journey ahead would not be easy. The scars of the past would take time to heal, but looking at her children, she saw the strength and motivation to move forward. She had overcome the most frightening obstacle of her life, and now, with her family reunited, she felt invincible. Justice had been served, and the truth, however much they tried to hide it, had found its way, brought by the wings of an unexpected friend. In the following months, the story of the King Raven and Sophia's trial echoed throughout the country, inspiring debates about the nature of evidence and the relentless pursuit of truth. Elena, in her lectures and interviews, always emphasized the importance of keeping an open mind, trusting intuition, and never underestimating the ways in which truth can manifest itself. She became a symbol of a more humane and sensitive justice, a judge who dared to look beyond the conventional. The raven, for many, ceased to be just an animal to become a symbol of hope, a silent guardian of truth that hovered over the world, ready to intervene when injustice threatened to prevail. And so, the story of Sophia and Elena intertwined, a vibrant testament that, even in the darkest moments, the light of truth, the warmth of human connection, and the strength of overcoming always find a way to shine, guiding us towards a future of justice and peace. In the months that followed, Elena felt a profound transformation in her very essence. That case not only redefined her career, but also the way she viewed the world and herself. Her intuition, once a silent voice amidst the rigor of the law, was now a powerful compass. She began to openly advocate for a more flexible justice, one that did not cling solely to obvious paths, but was willing to consider the unexpected. In her lectures at universities and conferences, Elena shared the story of the King Raven, not as a fantastic anecdote, but as a testament to the truth that, at times, hides in the crevices of the conventional. Her eyes shone with renewed conviction, and her hands gestured softly, conveying the passion she felt for a more humane justice. She became a mentor for young lawyers and judges, encouraging them to look beyond the case files, to feel the pulse of the stories presented to them. At home, her relationship with her children and husband deepened. Evenings were filled with conversations about the day, laughter, and the warmth of hugs. Elena, who once felt consumed by the rigidity of her work, now found a sweeter balance, a constant reminder that family was her safe harbor, the source of her strength and her greatest joy. She understood that true justice began at home, in how we cultivate love and understanding. Meanwhile, Sophia's life blossomed like a flower, reborn after a long storm. The first months were a delicate process of healing, of relearning to trust, of rebuilding her routine with her children. Each morning, seeing them wake up, she felt a lump in her throat, a mix of pain for lost time and immense gratitude for each new day. Her grandmother, with her wisdom and patience, was a guardian angel, helping Sophia get back on her feet. The community, which had once judged her, now embraced her with warmth. Neighbors brought dishes of food, offered help with the children, and suspicious glances had been replaced by smiles and gestures of solidarity. Sophia, over time, found a new passion. She began working at a community center, helping other vulnerable women, sharing her story of overcoming adversity and offering a friendly shoulder. Her eyes, once marked by sadness, now radiated a soft light, a testament to her resilience. She dedicated herself to showing that even after the greatest adversities, it is possible to find a new purpose, a new hope. Her children, in turn, were the mirror of her recovery, growing strong and full of life, with the certainty that their mother's love had overcome all barriers. The King Raven, the winged messenger of truth, became a legend. Its image adorned murals in cities, inspired children's stories, and was the subject of documentaries. It became a symbol that nature, in its wisdom, can surprise us with profound lessons, and that truth, however much they try to hide it, always finds a way to light. The story of Sophia and Elena, intertwined by the courage of a judge and the intervention of a raven, was a constant reminder that justice is an ideal to be pursued with faith, compassion, and an open mind. The human connection, altruism, and the unshakable belief in overcoming adversity were the pillars of a future where hope would never be abandoned. And so, the legacy of that extraordinary day continued to inspire, to guide, and to reaffirm that, even in the darkest moments, the light of truth always finds a way to shine, illuminating the hearts and minds of all present.